Welcome to match week 3 of the Fantasy Premier League, and we've got one big question to kick us off with. Frankie, your advice last week was you should probably triple captain Erling Haaland. You went on to grab a hat-trick against Ipswich Town. Did you triple captain him?
Big mistake. I was rushing out the door to go to Crystal Palace. I logged into my son's team and added it for him, and I said I'll do mine in the car, and he's not the best at being patient in the car, so I had to entertain him all the way to Selhurst Park, and while I was doing that I forgot to triple captain my Erling Haaland, so no good.
Brilliant. How did you get on last week? You happy with your points haul?
Yeah, it was still good. I was still pretty happy. Lots of green arrows, which is always nice. In fact, the only green arrow that I didn't get was in my family league, where my son, because he had triple captain Haaland, went flying straight to the top of the league. So my 6-year-old is kicking my backside at fantasy at the moment.
What was your total? Can you recall?
80.
Yeah, I got 75, so you did a bit better than myself. I thought my haul was okay. On Saturday night, I was green arrows everywhere. I was like, hey, then Sunday, a few, because I don't have much Liverpool. I got knocked down a few pegs, but I've gained week on week. So I'm okay with where I'm at going into match week 3. Let's get straight into the business then. Would you like to kick off with your team or my team? I've got them both ready. Which one would you like?
Let's go Gio's team. Let's have a look, because you always give me a bit of inspiration and some ideas, and I'm struggling at the moment for this week.
I've done a transfer.
I
did a transfer earlier on in the week, so I've used up. Every week I've done a transfer. This one's no different. So here's my team heading into the weekend, and the transfer is brought in Semenyo of Bournemouth to replace Minte of Brighton. And it's not because I don't trust Minte, it's just because I don't trust Brighton. We've got far too many options now. Now, after doing this transfer, Matt O'Reilly got injured in the League Cup. However, he's not a winger anyway, so I don't know if he'll impact Minte too much, O'Reilly. But Semenyo, I thought, was fantastic against Newcastle, got an assist, really unlucky not to score. Up against Everton, then there's a couple of difficult fixtures, but then he's got some easier fixtures as well. But just 5.5 million. I like players like him and Rodgers who I can bring in and just leave them because they're cheap enough. Some games will be on the bench. As you can see, I've got Jai Boone on the bench for this weekend. But in the future game week, Bourne will be in, Semenyo will sit out, and I'll just pick them as and when, depending on their opposition. But I'm happy with my Semenyo pick, and the rest of them is, as you've seen in previous weeks, Henderson, Podol, Alexander-Arnold, Gabriel, Jota, Eze, Rodgers, who I think deserves points, actually. He's been very unlucky not to pick up a goal and assist, but away to Leicester, I'm thinking this could be his week. So if you haven't got Rodgers, he'd be someone I'd highly recommend this week. And we've got Haaland, Isak and Muniz. Again, still not scored, but he's had the most shots in the box from anyone that has yet to score in Premier League, away to Ipswich this weekend. So I'm quite confident, actually, in my little team for this weekend, Frankie. And Semenyo, I've got a feeling he's going to be hitting the back of the net soon, so I'm getting him in now.
I like it. I'm making notes because, like I say, my team's not locked in yet. I've got transfers available and I'm not sure what I'm doing. So I've thought, just make a couple of notes of Gio's recommendations there. Yeah, I mean, I planned to have a team that I could roll at least for the first 3 or 4 weeks without making any transfers, so I could build a bank. I'm hoarding transfers at the moment like I hoard away day priority points. So, yeah, I didn't want to use them up, but with the Liverpool-Man United game there, and I fully expect Liverpool to dominate Man United, it's still not the best fixture. It can be one of those sort of tight games. Man United are going to make it as difficult as possible. And then the 2 Newcastle players there as well versus Tottenham, I don't like that too much either. So I'm not confident in that team, and really it's screaming out to use the 2 transfers. I did look at Rodgers. Rodgers hasn't picked up many points yet, so that's what's kind of putting me off there. Semenyo, I know you sort of mentioned him. You said I found a little gem. Mate, I watched that game against Bournemouth the other night, and while they looked terrible, we looked terrible as well, and I fully accept that. It was just a League Cup match that doesn't mean too much, but my they were awful. So
yeah,
bad.
but a few players missing. I think Semenyo obviously came on for the last 10, 15 minutes or something like that. I was pleased when the Bournemouth team came out and he wasn't in the starting 11. I thought, oh, brilliant. I'd already done the transfer. I thought my FPL asset has been rested ahead of the weekend. This is good news. And I thought Evanilson looked a right handful against us, and I thought he looked a handful against Newcastle. So if you're a listener and you're in the market for a striker, I certainly would not be putting you off getting Evanilson in a Bournemouth. I think I like strikers that are almost guaranteed to play, like Isak, because like he's just got no competition at the minute, has he? He's just that's a Newcastle striker. And I think Evanilson will become that player for Bournemouth where he just plays every week. And that's something I always look for in fantasy Premier League players. So I think, yeah, Evanilson, I think would be high on my list if I didn't have the three I've got. If I was looking to bring somebody in, I think he's someone that would be on my short list.
Well, I am looking because I'm potentially going to offload Solanke. If I was going to make transfers, and 2 transfers this week, I think one that would go would be Szoboszlai. He's just not getting return. Seems to be somebody that's always in the team. Just no points return is getting a little bit frustrating. And I would also take out Solanke. But I want Villa. I think they've got a good run. I still believe a bit in Villa to kick on a little bit. So Watkins for me, strikers like that, the goals come eventually. So I'm expecting Watkins to notch very shortly. So I'd like, if I'm going to make a change, Watkins would be someone who comes in. That would then leave me with 5 million left. So I've got to find a £5 million midfielder. Unfortunately, Rodgers has gone up by 0.1 of a million. So he's now 5.1 million. So I can't get Rodgers if I bring in Watkins. So a little bit tricky. So then I was looking and I was like, I can't really find someone that I'm totally confident in. The other one that's obviously being bounded around at the moment, which I can't get on board with this, is the Madueke. Everyone's saying 3 good fixtures incoming. You know, he's got that hat trick, and all of a sudden everyone's like, he has to be the man who's transferred in this week. I'm not a believer in Chelsea, and I'm not a believer in Madueke either, especially after last night. They were awful. So
it's a bit swings and roundabouts, isn't it? I'm at the minute with the mentality of you. I've got no Chelsea players, and I've got no intention of picking up any Chelsea players. I'm still evaluating them as a team and the individual players within that team. However, I think if you don't move early, sometimes you miss the opportunity, don't you? Like Rodgers, for example, had you got him at the start of the season, he's 5 million. Now, because he's gone up by 0.1, it rules out a lot of people. A lot of people now just can't afford him, and I think you risk a little bit of that with your Chelsea assets. That if they were to go on and keep scoring goals, the likes of Palmer and Madueke and possibly even Jackson become unobtainable, and everybody will move over. I like a gamble. When I last season I didn't do very well at Fantasy League, and because I wasn't doing very well, I gave up. But the season prior, I did really well. Won a lot of my mini leagues. First season I'd ever taken it seriously because it was the first time we'd ever done Fantasy League on Hammers Chat, and I needed to win the Patreon League to save some money. And I finished 17,000th in the world, and I did all right, right? But my success that season came from early gambles. I went on Matoma earlier than the majority of people, and then when everybody was getting him, I'd already had him, and he'd already scored a brace for me. I think there was a game he scored 2 goals, and that was his first goal and second goal of the season, but I'd already had him in my team. So I don't mind moving early and gambling. It doesn't always work out, but that's why I've gone for Semenyo. That's why I had Rodgers at the start of the season. I like a punt. And I'm always going to like a punt, unfortunately. I think so. I think Madueke at the minute is what I would class as a gamble. But buying somebody off the back of a hat trick, I don't know. That doesn't feel like concrete data, if you know what I mean. It's a one-off. So I ain't rushing out to get him. It's a bit like Lucas Paqueta to make it West Ham. Paqueta got a hat trick of assists against Wolves, but in 2024. The calendar year, he's only got 1 assist in the Premier League. He's got 1 assist in the FA Cup as well. So 2 assists literally in 8 months for Paqueta. But yet just before Christmas, he notched up a hat-trick of assists in a game. So I think sometimes you can maybe get jumped too early. But I'm not against it. Fortune favours the brave sometimes. So there you go.
It does. Normally, so my normal strategy is to go quite early with wildcard. Normally, this would be where I'd be doing it because I'd be looking at that and I'd be saying, well, triple Liverpool, I've had my returns off of them. Now, Man United, I don't really want three players from any one team unless it was, potentially last week when it was City versus Ipswich. I don't like having three players because if they have a tough game and it doesn't quite go according to plan, then you get three players that don't perform and don't return points like they should. So normally this would be my wild card week, and I normally go to form. Premier League is all about form, and you'd normally be looking at those players who have hit the ground running early, get them in, and that sort of helps you kick on very early on and like you say, get points on the board early. But because I'm building those free transfers, I was hoping this year that I wouldn't have to do that. If I can last one more week, having free transfers next week, I think gives me quite a lot of options, and I could really, tinker around with that team and get myself set up for the next sort of 3 to 4 weeks. So that was what I was trying to do. But I'm getting twitchy, Gio. I've had drafts, I've had players out, I've been close to pushing that confirm button a couple of times. So I've got a feeling that those 2 free transfers that I've accumulated so far are going to vanish.
Apart from Watkins, has there been anyone else on your radar for this weekend?
Not really. Nothing. No one that really stands out, and that's why I haven't pulled the trigger yet, because I've been looking and I'm like, the Madueke thing I'm not confident in, but Chelsea seems like, on paper and looking at their fixtures, it makes sense. So it was like, do you look at that? Do you look at Joao Felix? Obviously, bit part last week, but still got a return. Is he going to start seeing the starting lineup?
Yeah, there's just too many players for me, Frankie.
Yeah,
there's Nkunku, Neto, Felix, Madueke. Palmer's obviously a 100% player in there, but he's the only one I feel that's guaranteed substantial minutes. I feel like other weeks Madueke might start, but I feel like he's almost guaranteed to come off because of how many attacking players they have on that bench. So I'm scared. Unless it's Cole Palmer, I ain't getting a Chelsea striker. I don't think.
No. Big question, Gio.
Go on.
Haaland.
Yeah.
Do we captain him to jinx him so he doesn't score against West Ham?
I'm up for that. He's got my armband. Yeah, I've already given him my armband, Frankie. When it comes to Fantasy League, I put loyalty to one side. I'm in it to win it, right? What do I want to do? Do I want to win the league and pick the best team, or do I want to put my Claret and Blue specs on but sacrifice my team? I ain't sacrificing my team. I don't believe in fate and all that sort of stuff. So when people say, "Oh well, then if Haaland gets hat-trick, it's your fault," it's not my fault. It's got nothing to do with me.
Well, I'm glad you see it the positive way, Gio, because normally if I bring a player in or I do something like that, it goes right against me. So I normally use that to my advantage a little bit, and I can say, right, I'm going to captain Haaland, and that means that Kilman will have him in his pocket all game. So
well, I can assure you, Frankie, that whatever you do this weekend with your fantasy league team has absolutely zero bearing on what will occur in the Premier League this weekend, right? I don't.
There will be a lot of people who disagree with you, Gio.
I know,
I know. A lot of people.
But I strongly believe that if I captain Haaland or not captain Haaland, Haaland will still perform the same on Saturday night, regardless of my decision to captain him or not.
Do you see that the same as when you have a bet, Gio? You're obviously one of these people who.
Yeah.
You have a bit of luck. It goes for you, because there are other people that if I did something, it does totally the opposite. I'm one of those people. No matter if I said now, right, for example, City, if I went and put $2,000 on City to beat West Ham now, West Ham would go out and beat them 3-0. That's the sort of person that I am. So
I am emotionless when it comes to betting. Completely emotionless.
You're dangerous, Gio. You're dangerous.
I will not pick things in my bet because I like the player or because I like the team or I'm hoping that team wins. I don't do stuff like that. I pick what I think is going to happen. And a lot of it's eye test and a lot of it's data driven. But that's how I go about it, because Well, my bet's got absolutely zero bearing on how the game will unfold. It just does not matter. It's not a thing. So, yeah, I bet because I want to win money. And listen, I sometimes have my fun ones, which are pure. Like I will have a bet on West Ham to beat Man City, and it will be a scorer and a score. So I don't know what it'll be. I'll decide tomorrow night, but it might be 2-1 West Ham and Bone to score the first goal, but only because it'll be like 80-1 or something. And it's just a bit of fun. And I hope that one wins. But yeah, if I'm going to do a bet, I'm picking what I think is going to occur, not what I want to occur.
Sometimes you just know, don't you? I remember being Southampton away when we drew. Did we draw 3-3 or did they beat us 3-2? I can't remember what it was, but Charlie Austin came on. And as soon as he came on in like the 85th minute or whatever it was, I just went, Charlie Austin, next goal scorer. You just knew it was coming.
Yeah,
they got a penalty 2 minutes later, and who steps up? Charlie Austin does. Sometimes football, you just know, don't you?
Well, actually, before we go then, I'll round this up. That's my confirmed team. We'll find out what Frankie did next week. During the international break, we're going to have 2 or 3 videos up regarding Fantasy League. We're going to have a couple of fun ones, like if we were to wild card, what would our squad look like? We're going to do a couple of those videos as well. But we're also going to be launching a private league for the viewers of this series only. So you have to tune in during the international break to get the code for that Fantasy League. And then it'll start the weekend after international break, and there'll be a prize up for grabs. So we'll reveal more during the international break. So do tune in over the next fortnight. My bet for tomorrow, though, I've my £5 on this. Frankie confirmed he's seen this. I've got 3 first scorers across the Premier League, 250-1. I thought it was just ridiculous odds for this to happen. Trying to remember who they are now. It's Evanilson of Bournemouth, Muniz of Fulham, and Ollie Watkins of Aston Villa. Those 3 players will score first in their game. I put a £5 on, 1,250 back if it wins. So I thought those odds were quite good. And I said to you, who do you think will score first in those games? You picked 2 of them.
2 of them, yeah. And it's only because, if I'm honest, when I went and looked at the squads and the previous matches for the other teams, Evanilson hadn't played. So he wasn't on my radar. But if he had been on my radar, it could have been very different, because that was the game where I really struggled.
He looked good against us. He came on in the second half, and I thought he looked really good. And he looked good against Newcastle. I think he was really unlucky not to score against Newcastle. That's 2 games in a row. A striker's been unlucky not to score. And for me, that is an indication that a goal is coming, that they're doing everything right. Their timing's right. Their runs are right. Everything, they're linking up well with their teammates. They've just been lacking that finishing touch for whatever reason.
Sounds to me, though, Gio, that you need to cover that with any time version of that.
Maybe,
well,
but Evanilson,
just in case.
Evanilson to score this weekend, I think it's happening.
As long as they all score, but it weren't first.
I know, but as long as Semenyo passes the ball to Evanilson, I want an assist for Semenyo out of this one. 2-1 Bournemouth. Evanilson scoring first, and Semenyo scoring the second one. And we've got a happy Gio. And I'll be a Bournemouth fan for 5 minutes. Come on, Bournemouth, up the cherries. But anyway, Frankie, anything you want to add before we disappear?
No, I'm looking forward to that wild card draft. I think that'll be a fun thing to do. And actually, it's probably a something that I should do, because I'm sitting here debating these transfers. I said I'd normally do an early wild card draft. Maybe that would convince me to go that route rather than the free transfer route. So
yeah, I've got no intention of doing one. But I think when we do that video, I might get tempted. I might go, actually, do you know what? I've come up with a really good team here. I'm playing it. So tune in next week. We'll have our wild card drafts. But in the comments below this video, let us know your team heading into the weekend. Any transfer tips you have. Frankie's debating it. He'll be back later to see what you're all saying. So 1 or 2, you might have a little bit of a wink and a nudge for him. Say, you want to get this player, Frankie? Put it in the comments below, and we'll also include them for our wild card draft next week. So 3 or 4 of you say the same player. We're paying attention. We're willing to nick your ideas. We're not precious here. We're willing to steal them. But if you enjoyed this video, please do drop a like on it by clicking thumbs up. It's going to time to chat myself. Thank you. Catch you in a bit.